मैं बेड इतना गंदा तुम कितना गंदा लग रहा है What is the idea? कैसे What? हम है ना क्या चीज क्या लेकर नहीं हाँ what is it baby I know because he was angry with Jay so with he just said it like that I know him better and that time he was very upset over the baby task एकदम वो सब
Yes,
बात
sir.
है तो प्रॉब्लम हो हम बोले
Hi,
ठीक है
sir.
सुना तो प्रॉब्लम एकदम सुना
Are we audible? Sir, can you hear us?
अच्छा ये देखो ये सेकंड पार्ट क्यों नहीं आ रहा है मतलब लेकर का तो फालतू वाला तो जबरदस्ती तुमको अपना हेल्थ खराब करना तो करो आई कांट टेल तो तुम सेकंड होगी तो पिक्चर ऊपर कोई नहीं लेता है
So can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Bluetooth was on.
Okay. So right now we can hear you.
Is the light okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm online, huh? So you come whenever. Yeah, just the Zoom call. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, sure. We've got 9 minutes. Yeah, 8 minutes we've got, na? 4 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Idiot, come. Leander's coming on, huh? Sorry? Yeah, okay. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
You're audible. Okay.
How are you going to switch screens?
So it's going to be together. Both of you
Yeah.
are going to show up together.
Hmm?
So
You
both
can
the
do
screens
that?
together. Yes, sir.
I'll just change my view so that both of you come together on YouTube.
Okay.
What up, stud?
Hey,
How you doing, buddy?
good.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Hurry, I need one more prop. Hold on. One second. You good, bud?
Yeah.
You good, bud? So just to recap on what all we're talking about, I'm going to let you start off with, you're doing any introduction or something?
Well, no, you don't need an introduction. It's just kind of, it'll be a casual start. So we'll start in a couple of minutes anyway. So basically, we'll just start talking about how everything started, your journey.
When are you starting to record?
Another 4 minutes.
Super. So we're talking about sports education. We'll say hi to each other back and forth, then we're going sports education. Then we're talking, is this centered here? It's a little wider now. This will come.
Yeah, that's fine.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's okay.
Is that better? That's okay.
Yeah, so we just go with the flow.
Yeah, Baba.
Yeah, we'll just go with the flow, and this is live, so this will be live. The flow, we just start off how the career started, and then we'll talk about how a kid, how a youngster decides on how he's whether to take sport as a career, and then we take it from there on parents' roles, and then whatever discussions we want to, whatever you have in mind, whatever I have in mind, we are going to sing. So we've gone live, Lee. So people are going to be logging on, but you don't need a introduction. You're one of the legends of Indian sport, and tennis, like tennis and golf, are two individual sports, so it's always a lot tougher. Let's start about how we started out, because Calcutta has a sporting history, and just tell us how you started out. I got 10 calls yesterday saying that everyone thought you're going to be a footballer.
Yeah, it's
So see how
quite
we go
interesting
live,
actually. Say again?
No, we are on live now. So
Yes,
It's live, sir.
we are live, so it's perfectly fine. People are joining in, so we can start the session.
okay.
Yeah, AB, it's really interesting
So
that
just
both of
tell
us
us,
have.
because like I said.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so no, so just tell me, how come you didn't become a footballer? Because all the uncles that I know said that Lee was a great footballer, and we all thought he's going to be a footballer. What's the story about that?
I think that growing up in Calcutta, we had a very privileged upbringing. Privileged not just in the fact that we had parents that we grew up to who set an environment for us to become the champions that we've become and to become the human beings that we've become. But also, if you look at the community that we grew up in, whether it was, you were at school at St. James, I went to school at La Martiniere. We both kind of grew up at the Tollygunge Club and the South Club. And I know that the Calcutta Cricket and Football Club, CCNFC, became such an unbelievable environment for us to become the people that we've become. I think that if you look at a lot of your friendships, a lot of my friendships, they come from the CCNFC club. They come from South Club, Tollygunge Club, and that whole Calcutta environment that we were brought up in. I definitely feel very blessed with.
So Calcutta is known as
the relationships that I grew up there.
Yeah, but tell us about the football story. People don't know that you. But I believe you started with football. Is that true?
That is true. I don't feel like I'm a very talented tennis player. I feel that most of my talent actually is in my athleticism, or in my hard work, or in my threshold of pain that I can take. The long hours that it takes to achieve a certain amount of excellence. You got to put your body and your mind through a lot. And growing up in Kolkata, I grew up as a football player. I feel like I'm more talented in football than I am in tennis. And it's that when I was about 11 years old, I had a injury on my knee, which came from repetitive kicking of that big heavy football when I was just 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, and then at 11, eventually my knee wore out. So I had to switch paths from football to tennis, and it was quite an interesting journey, because I wasn't a very good tennis player when I was a kid. At La Martiniere, where I studied, I played for the hockey team, the football team. I swam for school. I ran for school. I played cricket for school. But tennis was not my favorite sport. I switched over to tennis at the age of 12 after a long discussion with my parents because I always wanted to be an Olympic athlete. I always believed in the Olympic movement. I used to polish my dad's Olympic medal every Sunday, and I felt that football was my passion, but tennis was really my vehicle to achieve excellence.
Right. So there are a lot of parents who actually want to, are not sure about, what sport to take, when to decide what sport to take as a career. So what do you, what do you tell parents? Even I have so many students who come to me and say, I want my parents coming to me and saying that, I want my child to be a golfer or a cricketer or a footballer. How does one decide, and when does a parent actually decide whether they should pursue sport?
So I feel like at a young age, it's very important to build an athlete. I feel like physical fitness, mental fitness, which is so ignored in our sports centers, and emotional fitness. All three of these have to be looked at as curriculums. I feel that at a young age, starting from the age of 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, you're trying to build athletes. You're trying to build an environment around your child where you're focusing on that happiness and that passion for sport. You're focusing on not winning and losing, but you're focusing on teaching your child, male or female, how to explore and learn the craft. So for golfers, you would get your young kids with smaller size clubs, and we'll get into equipment a little later, but just to swing away at it, or take a putter and putt away. Or in tennis, we used to play hand tennis, just with a hand and a ball against the wall, and we'd play singles and we'd play doubles, and it was a great way to get your friends together in the colony to go out there and play against a wall. And I think that is where the passion stems from, is from playing with your parents. Like for me, playing with my dad, playing rugby with my dad at CCNFC, playing football with Uncle Tiblu and Uncle Ravi Thapa and Jihan and the whole gang in CCNFC. Really kind of got me going. Sunny Uthup was my classmate and one of very dear friends of both of us. He's one of my best mates, and in school we would play against each other in the sport that was in the season. Playing for different houses. But we would also play tennis together. We would play football together. We'd play cricket together. Sunny was always a better cricketer than I was, but just to go out there and play with your friends.
So this is to
really
put on
where the passion
record,
starts.
the only guy I got out since I became an adult was Sunny. I bowled him, so that's my only wicket in CCFC. I hope he's hearing that.
Just one of the guys who is so lovable and so big-hearted, and he's always been such a close confidant of mine, and I've known him since I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and ever since then till today, he's one of my closest confidants. And I always go to him when I'm in doubt of something, or if I need reassurance of if I'm doing the right thing. I always go to Sunny, and I think I've never forgotten my roots, and I think these friendships, like you and I share, going back so many years, mean the world to me. They mean so much to me because of the fact that not many people know how well you play tennis, and not many people know how you hit that slice serve. But I think it's more the human beings that it's the champion of life that you are, and the champion of life that Sunny is, that I resonate with. I lean on you guys because of that unconditionality of the friendship.
Right. So that's something that reminds me of LG, where we both trained. I think we were both taught and told that, being a better human being than a champion, that's what you should keep in mind. We'll come to that later, but Lee, just one thing, this is something that a lot of kids have started doing, and I think it's not a good idea, is, a lot of children are just choosing a sport to specialize in very, very early in in their career, like 8-year-old, 9-year-olds only focusing on golf, or only focusing on tennis or squash, and you see that they don't develop as athletes. Their footwork is not so good. Their flexibility is more one-sided and things like that. So I know that I'm sure we both agree that you need to play a lot of sports, especially when you're young, to develop as an athlete. Uh, I would like you to tell the parents also, what you think, specializing their children at a really early age, especially thinking that if my son plays football, he may, hurt, may break his hand. So let him just keep playing golf or tennis and just stick to it. So I would just want you to say a few things uh, on this.
That's a big conversation, Ivy, because firstly, I think that the parents' responsibility is unconditional love. As a son to my parents and as a single father to my daughter Ayana, it's very important to give unconditional love, win or lose, performance being good or bad, regardless of what. The parents' sole responsibility is security for the child, is putting food on the table and a roof over the head. And at the same time, if your child excels in some discipline, be it sport, be it any kind of sport, or be it in studies or in computer sciences, or even if your child wants to go to the moon, whatever the passion is of your child is to support that passion and to give unconditional love, regardless of triumph or disaster. I feel that that is a very, very important ingredient that parents should do, is that not to necessarily be the best friend of your child, not to necessarily be the coach of your child, not to necessarily be the fitness trainer or the mental toughness coach or the mentor. I think that I got lucky because both my parents played sport at a very, very high level. My father has been my guiding light right throughout because he is an Olympic champion. He's also a doctor of sports medicine. So hence, I got lucky in that. But I don't feel that many kids have that advantage. That being said, I think it's very important for the parents or me as a father, even to my daughter, to just give her unconditional love, unconditional security, to let her know that Papa's there no matter what. That being said, I think it's very important to then, whatever discipline your child is excelling in, to find the right environment for your child and put your child into that. So I'm a product of boarding school, right? You went to LGE yourself, and I'd love to ask you your experiences because you went off to, I believe you turned professional when you were 17 or 18, I believe.
17, yeah.
And then you went off to LGE in Orlando, Florida. And I know that Dad and you have had many conversations over this, but how do you find that from a young age, when a child is like, say, 5 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old, don't you feel that it's very important to build an all-round athlete, to play team sport as well as individual sport?
Yeah, of course. And it's I think what the first thing I'll give you an example. The first thing when I went and met David Striegel, and that was my first session with him. He's a sports psychologist. He's trained, I think, some of the top golfers and tennis players in the world. And the first thing Dave told me was, he gave me a notepad and a pencil, and he said, you go back today and make a list of all the positive people around you. All the positive people, all the people who support you, who are positive, and make a list of them, and then make another list of all the negative guys. People who are not supportive, and people who pull you down, or always negative about things, which could even be your parents, could be your spouse, could be anybody. And you come back to me tomorrow with that list. And when I went back to him with that list, he says, you're lucky that your parents are not on that list, and there are people on the negative list who don't really matter that much, who you can strike off. Because if you can't strike them off, then you'll have to work on them. But the guys you can strike off, you got to strike them off. And that's one of the best advices I got from him. So basically, coming back to parents, I think parents, the most important factor for a parent is to be of emotional support. Never have I played a tournament where I've been playing and thinking, if I play badly, my dad's going to get upset with me or he's going to shout at me. I always knew that I could come back and cry on my dad's shoulder and he would say, never mind, you got another day. And, I think that is where parents have got little more competitive and are probably hurting the children when they kind of show their emotions. We all as parents want our kids to do well, but once we start showing it and telling them how badly we want them to, I think that's where the problem starts.
Your dad's a thorough gentleman, and I've known him since I was a little guy, and he's one of the softest, gentlest people that I've met. And I know that he's been an unconditional inspiration to you. He's been a very close confidant to you, and I think that both of us can be very thankful for the families and the environment that we grew up in. So I feel like there's a big lesson in that to learn. My dad used to drive me really hard. He used to push me very, very hard to excel in whatever I wanted to do. He wouldn't just sit back and give me unconditional love. He wouldn't just sit back and say, okay, you got food on the table and you got a roof over your head. You got a good school you're going to. You've got a club membership that you can play sport at. Now just go live your life. No, my dad would drive me hard. He would give me the essentials that were there as a father, but then he would make me feel the sense of responsibility in choosing what my life was going to be like. And he taught me that at a very young age. I left home on the 12th of May, 1986, when I was a 12-year-old. And when I gave up my dream for football, it was really a big choice, because I used to sleep with my football boots. I used to carry a football around with me everywhere I went, even to school, and I would juggle all day long. I've gotten into trouble so many times in school because I would walk up and down the corridors, go up and down the stairs, just juggling this football, on my shoulders or on my head or on my feet, my thighs. And that was looked down upon when we were in school, because we grew up quite disciplined in our schools. But I think that when I chose tennis and I went off to the Britannia Academy down in Chennai, that's what really molded me, because I didn't know how to sew on a button then. I was so young, but yet I had to manage my own passport and visas and bank accounts and travel details and practice partners, and I had to take responsibility of my career at a very young age. At the age of 12, I found myself as what is now being called a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, to actually manage my career when I barely knew how to count beyond $10,000, because back then we had to, we weren't allowed to carry foreign exchange, and we had to just look after our careers, and not just find a way to work out in a gym where we didn't have infrastructure, or find a way how we could practice in the evening once the sun went down, because we didn't have floodlights, or find out about biomechanics and the books that I read now and the conversations I have now with my trainers and physios, but really about finding a way to succeed, finding a way to get the best team around me. That was really what was important for me, is to find a way to choose my team well. And I think this is what you just touched upon, is that when you spoke to Dad about going down to Orlando to the golf academy, I want you to talk about the difference in mindset of the coaches that were there and the professionalism in the training.
Yeah, so I never had a golf coach in my life, so no one really taught me the technique. I read Jack Nicklaus' book and actually learned to hit the golf ball, and I still refer to that same book, which is called Golf My Way, and that's like a Bible for me. And when I met your dad, and I was already a successful professional golfer, top 10 in India and stuff like that. It was me, and it was to get foreign exchange, right? When we were kids and we just started out our careers in the late 80s and early 90s, to get $100 was like a huge task.
It was like jackpot.
Yeah. So to go out there and train, and the whole concept of sports science actually opened up to me. And nutrition, fitness, mental toughness, biomechanics. So I went with your dad's advice, and I went to all the guys I think you worked with, right from
Dave
Etchelberry
Herman and
to Groppel
Etchelberry
to,
and did Groppel do your diet as well there? He
yes,
looked
Groppel
after
did my
your, he
diet.
did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he did. So
Man,
Jack
I would
Groppel
be
did my diet,
starving
and
every day there. I would feel
yeah, yeah.
hungry every night.
So
So
I
careful
couldn't
with the
get out
calorie
of bed.
count.
The first 1 week I couldn't get out of bed. The way Dave, he would say, "I'm going to take it easy on you," and then he would just kill you.
Oh, God.
So Dave Herman well. He's, I think, still Ernie Els's coach, trainer. So what I found was that everybody who are professionals there, who are nutritionists, fitness trainers, whatever it is, they are all have played sport at a certain level, maybe college level, but a certain level. Unlike, you find a lot of people in India where these people read books and become trainers, and I don't think that's a good idea. And I think that's where what you mentioned is very right, is to have a good team, to have a good team of support, which is going to take your career forward. And I know, I've seen Sanjay for like 25 years myself. I don't know how long. And I've seen he's been with you. And I mean, of course, your dad has been a support for me as well. So that support team needs to have that knowledge, and that is so important. So sports science, I think, is the next big thing in India, and I know you're already working on that. We're going to talk about that a little later, but uh, sports science, basically your team, is extremely important. Lee. I mean, you know it better than anyone else, and I think that's one of the reasons why India is not producing that many individual sport athletes, is because we don't have a good team around us.
I have tremendous respect, Ivy, for all our athletes in India. And I think that golf and tennis are very similar because one, they're global sports. You have to travel all around the world to play. Two is the individual sports. And even though in golf you have your caddy, at the end of the day, you are out there on the course managing yourself. You have to, your creativity, your fitness levels, your diet, your lifestyle, your mental toughness, your ability to make the tour across the world that you travel feel a little like home, so that you feel comfortable there. You don't feel overawed there. You don't feel the nerves and the pressure that comes from traveling around the world and playing at the big stages. I think that in that case, golf and tennis are quite similar. With most of the country clubs that we travel to around the world, where I play tennis, there's always a golf course. But I'm sure wherever you've played golf, there's always a tennis court. It's not rocket science why both of us are passionate about golf and tennis. But really, in this conversation, it's very, very important to find and choose the right team around us. The best fitness trainer, the best mental toughness coach, the dietitian, and also the biomechanics coach. Now, coming from a country like India, the reason I respect every one of our athletes is because the finance that it takes to invest in your own training, to invest in your own team. It's not like you have a club that's going to pay for it. It's not like you have an association that's going to pay for it. It's not like corporate sponsorship is easy to come by in non-cricket sports that you can have someone pay for that. Some of us are lucky that we have done really well in our junior career, so hence we've had the corporate sponsors come in and support us. But when you look at a whole, I feel like Indian individual athletes find it very tough to conduct their career year in and year out in performing across the world. And it comes from basically choosing that team. The way that I've done it, IB, is that I've actually tried to choose people whose strengths are my weaknesses and my strengths are their weaknesses. So basically, I've done a long, hard, honest study of myself when I was a young boy, and I continue doing it every year. At the end of the year, around Christmas time in December, I keep doing an evaluation along with my father, along with my sports medicine doctors, along with my fitness trainer and tennis coach. But when I was a youngster, I did a long evaluation of who I am as a young man, and what were my strengths, and more importantly, what were my weaknesses. And in that, I had to really choose people whose strengths were my weaknesses. So a simple thing like sports science training in India back in the 80s when I started was not very popular.
Right.
Now, my father had the knowledge, and I can go through these books that I'm reading here about sports vision and optimum sports nutrition, talking about Jack Russell. Um, I chose one Indian man, Sanjay Singh, who did not have necessarily a big sports biomechanic diploma behind him, but he had a hunger in him to learn. And the reason I chose an Indian as a traveling companion was because he understood the roots of where I came from. He came from the same culture, the same background. He was a great cook, so he could cook exactly what I wanted to eat. And I watched my calories, I watched my carbs, I watched the balance of protein intake as well as my fluid levels and so on and so forth. Now, getting into specifics of that is a whole different conversation. But as you can see, the mindset already went that while I was just focusing on my tennis and on my daily lifestyle, Sanjay would do my yoga with me in the morning as I woke up for an hour and a half. He'd do my mental toughness training with me, my visualization of breathing techniques in the morning when I woke up. Then we'd go out there and we'd eat breakfast. And breakfast was very, very disciplined and specific. After breakfast, we took a rest for a little while and then we'd go out and do our fitness. And with our fitness, then Dave Herman would take over. And he would take me through, one day would be calisthenics, one day would be long distance, basically sprint endurance. One day would be upper body weights or lower body weights or stuff like that. And then in the evenings after lunch, we would go out there and do tennis drills. And then Rick Leach, who was my coach for about 19 years, he also is a 9-time Grand Slam champion. He would take over. And he would then work on, the backhand return inside out, or he'd work on the second serve, kick serve on the ad court. So it was very, very specific, the training. And then in the evening, we used to go to mental toughness training, with Dr. Jim Lear, and he would take over and do the mental toughness training with it. So really, and then Sanjay would come in at night and do all the rehab with the massage and the cold baths and the jacuzzis and the stretching and all of that. And also, I think that having a team like this, it was essential to my longevity of my career, because I feel like if you keep changing your team, you keep bringing new people in and out, it's a very stop-start kind of environment. But that way, if you actually have good people who are with you for 15, 20, 25, 30 years that I've been blessed to have them
Also,
with me.
I think what also is that they need to believe in you, just like you believe in them. Like, your relationship with Sanjay would be a lot more than professional, right? I mean, he's also there to give you support. And I think what you're saying is so true, because unless your coaches believe in you, I don't think it's going to work out. I mean, the relationship never works out if the coach starts, losing the belief in the player that's playing. So I think, yeah, it's great, because I've seen Sanjay for like 20 odd years myself. I mean, traveling with you. So,
And I wouldn't be who I am without these guys. These guys, as you rightly said, it's a two-way road. You give them trust, you give them belief. You are not just paying them a salary, but you're giving them a vision. And the whole team comes together in a vision to try and be a Wimbledon champion, or in a vision to try and be an
exactly. So
Olympic
they
champion.
share your dreams, basically.
Share your dreams with you. That's the
Uh,
important part.
so, so just tell me, your tennis career. I mean, tennis careers don't last more than 15 years at the most. You're still going on. I'm sure you'll play the Grand Slams next year. I'm sure about that, no matter what you say. I know you're going to play some, and you got some tennis in you. And you've played with Martina Navratilova, and she's the goddess of tennis. Just tell me, the youngsters would want to know, what is the secret of someone having an extended career? And then I'm going to add something to it once you're done.
I think that it is all the above that we've talked about: unconditional love from our family and our loved ones, so that winning and losing doesn't become an emotional thing. It becomes a very practical, professional discussion. I think that choosing the right team of unconditional people who believe in your dream, and they believe in you and you believe in them. And whether you win or lose, if, for example, I've lost more matches in my life than I've won, and most athletes will probably say that. But I've just been blessed to have won at the right times. And just to play in one Grand Slam takes a mammoth effort, let alone winning 18 of them takes an unbelievable team around you. And I wouldn't be who I am uh, literally without my parents or without my team. And just to give an example of the passion with which I believe that in, is that My tennis coach, Rick Leach, has been with me 19 years. Before that, there was Bob Carmichael, who was with me for 11 years, and Bob passed away in 2003, unfortunately. But both those two have been my primary coaches on the international circuit. When I look at Dave Herman has been working with me since the age of 16 on my physical fitness. When I look at Sanjay Singh, he's been with me for 29 of those 30 years. So really, he's been that guiding partner who's been on my side, doing my yoga, doing my meditation, doing my massages, cooking my meals, looking after my equipment. And I'm dying to talk to you about sports equipment, Ivy, because customized equipment becomes so important in golf and in tennis. And that's also something that's just catching on in India. But to finish the conversation on the team, I think it's very important to evaluate yourself as a human being. Look at your strengths and weaknesses. Choose a team around you that gives you that environment, unconditional love, and their strengths are your weaknesses. And at the same time, when you have that longevity of relationships, I think that we all help each other grow. So I have sent Sanjay to a physical fitness school, or to massage school, or to sports rehab school. The hours and hours and hours of conversations that he's had with Dave Herman, or had with my father as a sports medicine doctor, or had with Dr. Jack Groppel about diet, or Dr. Jim Lear about mental toughness. All these people who are huge brand names in the sporting fraternity. And yes, I'm going back in the day, but even the young ones that are out there now, when he sits and has conversations with Venus and Serena Williams, or when he has conversations with Djokovic and his team, or you have a conversation with Sev, who is Roger Federer and Stan Wawrinka's coach, and the Davis Cup captain of Switzerland. When we have these conversations, Sanjay's picking up on ideas of what the modern guys are doing. So you keep evolving. I think that golf and tennis as a sport changes every few months, every 3 months, every 6 months, something new is coming out, whether it's the equipment or the training or the diet or the sports science of it, or the mental training of it. I think you got to keep evolving as an athlete. But talking about evolving, Ivy, I saw I read recently that Sir Jack Nicklaus just talked about the PGA in looking at controlling the distances that golf balls travel, or controlling the equipment in golf, because now the pro golfers like a Rory McIlroy or a Tiger Woods, to name a few, or just watching Rahm win recently, and they're just chewing up golf courses. I mean, the scores are crazy. What do you believe that since when you started playing in the 80s and 90s to today, how has customization of equipment changed the game?
So I'm going to come to that because that's a very interesting topic. But I just wanted to add one little thing about kids, because there'll be a lot of kids watching, and just one short note, and then we come back to the equipment. Is a lot of youngsters nowadays say, I'm making this sacrifice and I'm working so hard at my game, and I'm making this much of a sacrifice to play my sport. And that's something I believe is the whole approach is wrong, because when you love doing something, you love playing tennis, right? You'd rather be on the tennis court than anywhere else. I would rather be on the golf course than anywhere else. And I think if you love a sport, then you're not making a sacrifice if you want to be good at it. And if anyone is looking at, saying that I am making a sacrifice to play, to become a champion, I don't think it's going to last. Just give a quick thought on that one, and then we get to the equipment.
Yes, I think that that comes from passion. I think that comes from that same environment as a youngster. I think as children, we want to emulate our seniors. We want to emulate our parents and do what they do. We want to hang around where our elder brothers and sisters are. Like my two sisters are both older than me, Maria and Jacqueline, and they were both athletes. They both played sports. And Maria was a phenomenal athlete. So I would check her out and be like, I want to be like her. And Jackie was 7 years older than me, and Maria was 4 years older than me. So I wanted to emulate them as a young little brat when I was a kid. And also at the same time, being at the CCNFC club, or being at South Club, or running around Tully at the stables, or around the golf course and the swimming pool, I would love watching my other friends and see what they do. And I'd love emulating them. And I think that the playing field, I've been so blessed to be able to put on shorts and a t-shirt and a baseball cap and kids, as we used to call it in a school, and actually going to work. Most people go to work in a suit and a tie, and they go 9 to 5, and they have to leave their home at about 7 in the morning and drive an hour and a half to work in metro cities around the world. And they finish work at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and they come home at 9. And these 12-hour days that they're doing at work, 6 days a week, is rough. It's tough. And I think that even now in the times that we are living in this COVID pandemic, life in the business world is just going to get tougher. I think the economy is going to take a while to bounce back, but to get back to it, I think if you're passionate about something, and if you have enough belief in yourself and you work really, really hard, you can achieve anything in the world, anything. And I think that that is the important part, is that to really enjoy what you do. Yes, there are some days you're going to wake up and you're going to have a fever and you still got to go and work. Or some days you wake up and you got a thumping headache, or you're PMSing and you don't want to go to work, but you got to go to work. Or some days you wake up and you just don't feel right. You're bored of it, or you're tired of it, or you're burnt out. And this burnt out is a conversation that you and me have spoken a lot about how trying to stay fresh is important. But I could speak of, so many anecdotes and stories and memories that I have, IB, that when I've had to sleep in a locker room in Wolfsburg, Germany, because I didn't have enough money for a hotel room. This was in the winter of 1991. The previous year in 1990, I was #1 junior in the world. I only lost one match in 1990, and that was in the Australian Open final. I won Wimbledon and I won everything else I played. But in 1991, I didn't win a match until November, because now I'd moved up into the seniors. And I played the US Open in 1991, and that was the juniors. I won the juniors there, but in the seniors, the guys were much bigger than I was, taller than I was, stronger than I was, much more experienced. They all beat me up. Every time I played, I would struggle to win games. But then I slept in that locker room in Wolfsburg, Germany, because I had to play the qualifying to earn my hotel room. And I didn't have any money at all for a hotel room. And I was a very shy kid. You couldn't tell now, but you've known me since I was a young boy. I was a very shy kid. And, traveling the world alone as the only Indian. Ramesh Krishnan was on his retirement at that time. It is scary. It is dangerous. It's tough.
I've played in Europe, and I was playing in Spain one year, and no one spoke English, and I was the only guy there. I mean, the only Indian there, probably the only Asian there, and I felt claustrophobic. I felt like somebody was just throttling me because no one even spoke English there. And there were a few English guys there who were playing the European Tour qualifiers, and they just stayed amongst themselves. So I was like, nobody there, nobody to talk to, no one. It's tough. I know it's tough. So coming back to the equipment, I think the biggest change is that it's the guys who are not so talented, they can hit the golf ball as far now. Before, you needed to swing that golf club really fast and make good contact, right off the screws, literally the screws, because the wooden drivers had those screws, 4 screws, and then you had to hit it right in the middle to actually get the distance out of it. Today, you could hit it a quarter, a millimeter off, a few millimeters off, and still get the distance. And the shafts are way, way lighter. So, I'm sure that's with the tennis rackets too. So, the power that you can generate now is a lot more. And I think that is one area where, the mediocre players have started bridging that gap with the super talented players. That's what it is about golf, the titanium heads, lighter, stronger, shafts are lighter, and the technology they use is of NASA level. NASA scientists are working on golf equipment to give you that half a mile extra club head speed. And that's why Nicholas and everybody's saying that, you got to now put brakes on that. I don't know about the tennis racket, so I would actually want to ask you about how the tennis racket has evolved.
I think it's very similar, IB, in the fact that customization of sports equipment, in this regard, we're just talking about golf clubs and tennis rackets in particular, but we could get into clothes and apparel and shoes and orthotics and all of that, and also training machinery. But just as far as the tennis racket goes, I know that the margins between the good players and the great players has narrowed a lot, mainly
Exactly. The
because of the
same for
equipment.
golf.
I
So,
feel like, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I feel like back in the day when, I mean, I started playing with wood, and I felt that with wood, where you didn't have power, it really could tell the difference between someone who was strong and someone who was not strong. The weak guys would just about get the ball over the net. They couldn't hit it all the way to the baseline consistently for 2 hours or 3 hours. Whereas nowadays, everybody hits the cover of the ball. Everybody can take a tennis ball and serve it at, you know, 130 clicks an hour and above. I feel like the margins have shortened a lot, and I think that equipment is the main reason that tennis, I can speak for tennis with authority, that everybody is playing very similar. I feel like everybody's hitting a big serve, everybody's hitting the cover of a ball off a forehand. People have become baseline players now. A lot of the craft of tennis has kind of come away because of the equipment. And back in the day, even with the graphite rackets, when Stefan Edberg would come in and play a low forehand volley and the ball would just race off his racket, it was because of the power in his legs and the perfect technique that he had, you know. Whereas nowadays you could have very average volleyers come in and just stand right on top of the net and swat balls away, which doesn't look as attractive and it is not as consistent and they don't win as much. But I think that technology there is something to be said about controlling technology before it just gets too far out there, that it takes away the beauty of the game.
Okay, so I have one question. This is a question I always wanted to ask you. Is beyond Borg and Federer at their peak with the wooden racket Wimbledon final, who do you think would have won?
Both of them with the wooden racket?
Yeah,
Man, that's a tough question. You're, you're
I'm just
asking me to
asking you who's a
compare
better player.
players of two different decades.
Yeah, so
You put me on the
if you
spot.
ask me about a golfer, I would kind of.
You know, Bjorn Borg grew up with wood. He played with wood his whole career. He played with wood his whole life.
Okay, so let me change the question.
It's a
At
bit
the peak,
unfair to compare players of different
okay,
generations.
okay, but who do you think was a better player, or is a better player rather? Federer is
I
still there.
think that Federer is more all-rounded. You take the graphite racket away from Federer and you put a wooden racket into it, it would bring his serve down by about 30 to 40% in terms of power and potency. But at the same time, with the repertoire that Federer has of being able to play a baseline game, rally from the back, hit backhand topspin winners, even though he's got a single-handed backhand above his shoulders, to slice the ball and come up to the net, he could serve and volley. Federer to me is a more all-rounded player than Borg, and I have played Borg in singles, and I've played against Federer in singles, and I've got an undefeated record against both of them in singles. And I played Federer in 2001 in Indian Wells in Palm Springs, and I played Borg in was it Zaragoza, if I'm not mistaken, many years ago, and he was just literally on his last few tournaments that he was playing. But I would still say Federer's got unbelievable repertoire. As tough as it is and as unfair as it is to compare, two champions, great champions. Both of them have won Wimbledon more than 5 times each. It's very hard to compare players of different eras. But that being said, the history books really speak for themselves. The history books really tell you who's been more potent on all surfaces.
Okay, so this is a question again. I've asked you many a time one-on-one, but I'm going to put this on record. Keep taking pot shots at you, and people who criticize you and your team, and come and say all kinds of things about you. I mean, your record speaks for itself. So, but you don't react. But obviously, I want to hear from you because you never react. You just kind of ignore the whole thing. But there are people obviously jealous of you, and even though I know the answer, I want to hear it from you.
You know the answer to this, buddy. You're just putting me on the spot. That's all you're
No, no,
doing.
I'm not
But
putting you on
really,
the
it
spot.
is.
No, because see, when someone criticizes me, I get upset, and it kind of annoys me. But I know that obviously the guy thinks I'm good. So I just want you to. I don't want you to take names or anything, but I just want you to say that how do you look at it when people are taking pot shots at you and your team?
I,
Some of your guys, uh, you've delivered. I mean, no one has delivered the way you have. So,
So I
so
kind of actually deal with it in a unique fashion, IB, because I actually laugh at it. One is that if someone says something about me personally, it's water off a duck's back. I laugh at it. But if someone says anything about my parents or my team, look out. I'm very protective of my team, very, very protective. And if
that's how
someone's
it
going
should be.
out there to say some rubbish about my team, as they have over time, I actually go straight up to them and I take care of it. I think there are multiple ways of handling gossip. There are multiple ways of handling what's being said about you in the media, and there are multiple ways of handling what's being said about you in society. But my focus has always been about the history books. My focus has always been about excellence. And my father used an analogy when I was very young, and he said, son, achieving excellence is like climbing a mountain. At the base of the mountain, you'll have 1,000 people with you on the same journey. And as you climb up 10,000 feet, 15,000 feet, you get up to 18,000 feet, there'll be few people who can't handle the lack of oxygen, so they kind of wear off. And then that 1,000 becomes 500, and then you go up a little more, 20,000 feet, and they can't handle the oxygen there, the hard work and the effort. Their bodies are not ready, their minds are caving in. So then that 500 becomes 100, and then you climb out a little more to about 25,000 feet, and a lot of people really can't handle the pressure at that point because their minds are not ready. They can't handle the lack of oxygen. So what he was really trying to say is that the view from the summit of excellence is very lonely, because not many of your peers can keep up with you. But at the same time, you cannot fall and stop short and get distracted along your journey up that mountain. You can't listen to the noise, because the noise is just distractions. The noise is just people who cannot keep
Uh,
climbing with you.
now we need some of your now. No, now we need some of your secrets. Everyone has some superstitions, right? Like I don't wear a yellow T-shirt and never play a tournament. Uh,
Why?
it's just that I think I may have played badly in some tournament wearing a yellow shirt, and it kind of stuck on me. I have one more little superstition: is I don't cut my nails before a tournament, because I feel
It's a good one.
the feel goes once
It's a
you
good
cut your
one.
nails.
Geez, that's a beauty.
So tell us about a couple of your little blocks or superstitions that you have.
We're Indians. We're not superstitious, are we, buddy? Really, I mean, I have rituals. I have tons of rituals. So, for example, sitting here with you in my office space, I know exactly what's where. I know I have a Nelson Mandela little memento that he had given me right on my right hand side, if I'm not mistaken. Then I got a Buddha statue with a plant. Now here I've got Shoe Dog, I've got Agassi, I used to have a Muhammad Ali book, but a friend of mine borrowed that. I've got sports science stuff. So I've got stuff around me here that I know exactly what's where. I know I got my Olympic medal there. I've got another trophy. In my room, in my racket bag, I know exactly what's in my bag. I know exactly how it's laid out. I know I got my tapes for my
So
fingers.
did you always pack your bags? Because that's one thing I've
Always.
always done.
Nobody can touch my bags. Nobody, not even Sanjay. Nobody can touch my bags in that, because and if they want to get something from my bag, they ask me and take my permission to touch my bags, because I think that I'm very, very fastidious about my equipment, my shoes, my orthotics that are in my shoes. I know the exact orthotic that's in each of my shoes, be it my running shoe or my walking shoes or my flip-flops. That as golfers and tennis players, we're always in closed shoes. So I love wearing open shoes, when I'm in my jeans or in my shorts or hanging out. So even my flip-flops, so even my kolapuris, as we wear in India, or our jutis, they have insoles in them, and I don't want anyone to mess with them, because when I'm in a rush to go for dinner and I'm in a rush to go for a meeting, and I throw my shoes on, be it my dress shoes or my Kolhapuris, I want to know that my insoles are in there. You know, I don't want to be taking out from one shoe and putting into another shoe. I don't want to rock up at the tennis courts and suddenly not have the eye drops that you need because your eyes are dry because of the wind blowing so hard, or you know that the Vaseline that you need, you know, for your hands that just, you know, you've got a little cut. And that was a beautiful thing that you said about not clipping your nails too close to a tournament. I made the mistake, and I learned that lesson really young, IB. I was playing Davis Cup in New Delhi against Great Britain, and they had Jeremy Bates and all the big British players there at the time.
Oh.
And on the Thursday night before my singles match on Friday, I felt I needed a pedicure. So I went to the hotel that I was staying at. I'm not giving names away. I went to the hotel parlor I was staying at, and I went for a pedicure. And I was young. I was probably about 19 or 20 at the time. And I went for a pedicure, and the guy doing my pedicure, he started talking to me, and he's saying, "Saab, aapka bahut match dekh chuke hain, you know, aap India ke liye khelte ho, desh ke liye khelte ho, mere ko bahut acha lag raha hai ki main aapka pedicure kar raha hu," and all this sort of stuff. And he was so distracted that when he had the scalpel in his hand, he cut my foot on the underneath of my foot. And even though it was not a big cut, it was just a really deep cut, that it was on my left foot. And I went up, and I obviously got him to stop. I went up, and my dad had to stitch that cut up. And I had to play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in a bloodied shoe, because every time I ran, that cut just kept on bleeding. The stitches were not holding because of the way I was running. And tennis is an unbelievable demanding sport in terms of athleticism and movement, that you just had to play through the pain. And that was a big lesson that I learned. I wish you had told me this when I was 18, 19. I wouldn't have done that pedicure the night before a match. But we live and learn, right? And I think a lot of it is trial and error. The important part here to the kids around that is not to be scared of failure. You know, we've all failed in our lives. We've all come up short or not met our expectations or the expectations of our coaches and trainers. But the trick is, even when you fail and you fall down, is to get up and dust yourself off and go again. One of my favorite athletes in the world, Michael Jordan, who became a friend because we were managed by the same management team at that time, once said that I have failed more times than someone is willing enough to even try. I have failed more times than someone is willing to even try. And that's why I succeed. To me, I think the essence of some champions like Michael Jordan are that they have no fear. And I think that when you come from a country like India, you have nothing to fear. Nothing at all. You ain't got nothing to lose.
Okay, so just, you know, I mean, we're coming towards the end of our chat, but just one little touchy topic I wanted to talk about, you know, being in the limelight, being a star and being an athlete. Youngsters look up to you. You've got some kids, you know, who look up to their coaches, and you have to maintain a kind of a profile, a public profile, a social media profile, which, you know, there are times when we want to, you know, let our hair down and, you know, hang out with friends and not worry about what you're saying. But you don't do that in front of, you know, 20 kids or kids who look up to you, because, you know, you need to be a role model. Just what's your take on that? I mean, what do you say on that?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's a learning that we all have in this whole smart gadget world and social media world that we live in. I look at it in my own unique fashion, IB, because I grew up with parents who grew up with no smartphones around or no smart gadgets around. Back when I was a youngster in the late 80s, early 90s, you didn't have mobile phones, you didn't have social media. So everything was about letters and writing and human skills of communication and the ability to really listen well and to ask the right question, which I think is a dying art. I think that when a young aspiring athlete or when a young aspiring passionate kid has the ability to ask the right question and really hear what you're saying, not just listen, but really hear what you're saying, really feel what you're saying, I think the ability to grow is multiplied. I think that also growing up in in that time where we didn't have all these smart gadgets, communication became the essence. To be able to understand another human being and jive with them and really work with them. I've had 164 odd doubles partners in my career, and I've never once asked them to only blend to me. I've always tried to adapt myself to them, whether it is learning their language, or whether it was Czech or German or Spanish or even different dialects of English. The way the Aussies speak is different to the way the Americans speak. The way the Yanks speak is different to the way the Europeans speak, or an English partner would speak. So I think that adapting ourselves to others is more important than asking them to change for us. I think that one, you gain more friends that way because you adapt to different groups. Two is that you're able to understand people from all different generations. I could sit with my 14-year-old daughter and jive with her and chat with her about Instagram and social media and things like that, and also teach her that the dangers of social media are there, and teach her about how to protect herself from that. As a young Indian girl, as she's aspiring to be an athlete herself, traveling the world is going to be fairly dangerous for her too. And to be able to teach her the skills to stay away from the wrong places at the wrong time is important. To teach her the skills on how she has the safety net with Papa there, that she can call me and tell me anything. I'm never going to judge her. I'm going to protect her, is another one. And at the same time, I think that to teach her the skills on how to teach others to respect her by giving respect to them and teaching them how to respect her for who she is and what she stands for is very important. Because I think the world we live in today, IB, is very different. I think that you and I live in a fishbowl environment where everything we do is watched. Today, whether it is our smart gadgets or whether it is paparazzi or whether it is going, I love to go to the movies and walk around, or whether it is walking with our partners and showing a little PDA, it's going to be on the front page of the papers. So you can't really get affected by that. One, if you're willing to do that, you don't get affected by it. If you're not willing to do that, you conduct yourself accordingly. I think that how I do my social media, because I don't look at paying for social media. I don't look at having bots for social media. I work it very, very organically. I work it to a community of people, and I like to share this kind of knowledge. I do a lot of webinars. I do a lot of community conversations, because to me, a direct contact is much better than through another medium, even though social media mediums.
I'm going to come to these webinars and these trainings that you started, because that's really, really interesting. That will be my last question to you, because I know you're doing a lot of corporate stuff and you're adding a lot of value as a leader, so I'm going to talk about the corporate stuff that you're doing. But there's one thing, I wanted you to speak about a little bit, because we both gone and trained at the Sports Science Center, and we know that mental toughness, physical fitness, and nutrition is extremely important. But in India, nobody really talks about, the emotional stability and the emotional, the emotional condition of an athlete, which is extremely important. So I just want you to talk about it, because we only talk about mental toughness, fitness, and nutrition, and no one really talks about, the emotional stability part. So just a little bit on that, and then I'm going to come to the corporate part.
I think you're so right, Ivy, when you talk about mental fitness and emotional fitness. Up till recently, those were taboo subjects for us. A lot of the young, or not just young, a lot of the people who felt that they were succumbing to depression were looked down upon. A lot of people who had mental issues or emotional issues were looked down upon. And I think that it is very important for us to understand that every one of us have pressures. We have pressures coming at us in all different shapes and sizes. And I think that if we actually looked around us, in our peers around us, in our colleagues around us, in our families around us, I think you will see those pressures. What's important for me is to definitely have this team around me who can unconditionally support me. not just through my triumphs and my wins, but also through my weaknesses, also through my failing, also through my losses. I think that in an ability to focus on, and it's a big subject, so I'm trying to encapsulate in a little context on how the importance should be given.
Yeah,
There's
exactly
real
what was my question.
There's real importance to be given to mental toughness training, and it's not just emotional stuff. Mental toughness training is a curriculum. I could take you through umpteen number of books that my dad has taught me through, or my coaches have taught me through, or Jim Lear has taught me through, about having rituals and systems to handle different situations. Visualization, so to say. Visualization, as a young boy, I always used to visualize whether when I'd walk out to a Wimbledon match and I'd walk out to center court, I would visualize the color of the grass. I'd visualize the senses coming alive, what I would see, the stands, the crowd.
Even the smell of the grass. Yeah.
And we Indians are very, very, we live with our senses. You look at our food, you look at our culture, you look at our clothes, you look at our festivities. All our festivals are enriched with around food, around drink, around music, around colors, around lights, and our senses come alive. So I think that is very important for us Indians to work with our culture, even to excel in our sport, even to excel in our discipline. I think that there's a huge richness that we come from in India, and we need to use those cerebral attributes, that intellect, that student-like ability to achieve our success.
Right. Okay, so this is going to be my last question. It's in two parts. Okay, one is, you're doing a lot of corporate stuff and corporate leadership training. How to be more productive. I know you're doing a lot of these training programs. So two questions. One is, where do you see the similarity between the corporate world and the sports world? And second question is what you're doing, because it's really interesting because a lot of people don't know these seminars that you're doing. One is, the first question though is, what is the similarity between the corporate world and the sports world?
So there's a huge similarity in terms of excellence, in terms of quality of life, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional fitness. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all breathe the same oxygen. We all generally have the same sort of environments that we're brought up in. But what is the real difference between a champion's environment compared to an average person's environment is the quality of that. Now, as we've talked about equipment making the margins smaller, we talk about knowledge of gyms and fitness making the margins smaller. We talk about diet and these keto diets and these vegan diets and vegetarian diets. And I was vegan for 12 years myself. And all these new diets about controlling carbs and putting the right amount of protein and what kind of protein and what kind of products and things, the margins have become smaller. Also, I feel that the real difference between a champion's lifestyle and an average person's lifestyle is time management. We all get the same 60-second minute. We all get the same 60-minute hour. We all get the same 24 hours in a day, and generally approximately 30 days in a month. But how we utilize that time is really important for the things that are important to us. So what I try and do, Ivy, is that I'll give you a random example. I was on a webinar about 10 days ago, and I was talking to Häagen-Dazs in Europe. And Häagen-Dazs in Europe were their emerging markets. They had 27 countries on that call. They had 1,700 people on that call. And after my 20-minute monologue about the subject we were talking about, we threw it open to question and answers. And you won't believe the kind of questions that came at me about not just motivation, but about how to achieve excellence. Now, I'm not going to sit there and teach the guys at Häagen-Dazs how to make ice cream. I'm not going to sit there with the banker and teach him about numbers. But what I am going to do is to tap into my 30 years of my experience, and between my father and my 80 years, his 50 years, my 30 years of knowledge of sports science and excellence in controlling and managing a 30-day month, 24-hour day, about the importance of sleep, the importance of what we put into our mouths, the importance of understanding how our bodies function by testing our bodies, doing medical tests, which is blood work, measurement work, going to a mental toughness coach, and not looking down at it as being a psychiatrist when you have a weakness. No, about actually understanding what brain mapping is, and about understanding what, not dealing with the riffraff or dealing with the bullshit that people talk about all the time out there and try and pull you down. Don't get involved in it. You're basically dealing at a level of trying to achieve excellence, and that's where your focus is at. I'm not saying let it go. I'm not saying don't, how do you say, don't take care of it. Because if you give people enough opportunities, they'll keep throwing mud at the walls. You take care of that. But you take care of that in a way that is classy, in a way that is behind the scenes, and in a way that you know where they come from. So you don't leave yourself vulnerable to them throwing more mud at you. You know?
So I mean, for an athlete to, can contribute a lot to the corporate world, where he can talk about handling pressure, recovery, even being fit, because we both know that when you get tired, you can't think well, and you're not as sharp. That's probably one reason why racing car drivers are one of the fittest athletes in the world, because one mistake you die. So that's great. I mean, so you basically talking about leadership, you're talking about time management, you're talking about handling pressure. What else are you doing with these corporate talks?
There's so much there, IB. I just thought of a crazy idea of what you talked about racing car drivers and the suits that they wear and why they lose so
with
much
the G-force
and why they're so lean.
on the helmets.
And with the suits that they wear, you can actually, instead of just riding a bike or doing treadmill running or doing fitness or movement agility work, sometimes even wearing a suit where you actually sweat more, or where you get feedback from the suit, just as our Fitbits and our i watches and these fancy new technology gadgets give us. You can use tech to enhance your training. And I'm not going to generalize here and give you something specific, but I'm going to say you can use crazy tech to actually enhance your workout. Last night I was speaking to my tech guy, and we're devising a system. And he's like, Leo, I met you in February, and when I looked at you and I looked at your 47, I'm 48 years old. I looked at your leanness and your physical ability. I came to your matches and I watched you still run after 30 years and perform like you did. In the last tournament, your supposed last tournament in India, you were still in the finals. I got motivated, and last night he showed me, Ivy, he has a static cycle at the end of his bed. He has an elliptical machine in his office, home office, right? Because we're all in lockdown right now. And this cat has made it so natural that when he gets off his bed, even before he brushes his teeth, he gets on his bike and he bikes for 40 minutes just to boost his metabolism level. At 48, you have to look at that. You have to look at how you burn fat and how you burn the calories that you eat. And then he says, when I go to the office, I actually do most of my meetings while I'm on the elliptical. And he goes, I don't make it really tough and really hard like you athletes do. And I'm not looking for the size and the muscle mass and things, but I'm just looking at boosting my metabolism so I can stay lean, because I'm in a tech job. This cat has lost 18 kgs in the last 4 months. To me, that's my champion. To me, that's someone I say, hey, well done. And if I can motivate people like that, just from spreading the word and spreading the knowledge, and what I'm trying to do now is that after I've done more than 200 of these webinars, I want to now focus on set groups, because I believe in the corporate world, there are different levels of people, different levels of expertise that is needed. And I think depending on what level you're on, your lifestyle should be different. It's like in a team sport, like football, the goalkeeper has to train differently than the back. The backs have to be a different body type, which is big and tall and strong, because they're defenders, compared to the midfield guys. The midfield guys have to have a different vision and a different eyesight. As we look at that book right there, Sports Vision, it's not just about seeing, it's not just about having good eyesight, it's about having a good brain that can see things that most people can't. And you train a midfielder very different than you train a striker. So in all these different positions in a corporate world or in a team, I think there are specific training to do. And I think that's where I excel, is to come in and spend a little bit of time with somebody and give them their own unique, customized lifestyle. I think that's where my focus is going in, and it's kind of a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot along the way as well.
Okay, so we're going to be ending this with one short, message for everyone. I mean, I'll just talk about something that my father told me. When I was 17, and I went and told my dad that I'm going to play professional golf and I'm going to do this. So I'm basically not studying anymore, and I'm just going to play. And he told me one thing. He said, just remember one thing, that when you do something, do it 110%, because when you look back at your career, you should not have any regrets for not trying. As long as you are ready to promise me that, go ahead and do and follow your dreams, wherever you want to go. So, that's something I remember. And I always tell my youngsters who come to me and to always make sure that they have no regrets when they look back at their career a few years down the line. So why don't you give us a message for everyone who's watching this?
Man, that's why I love your dad. I think that was perfect advice. I can't top that. I think that your dad, we're very blessed to have parents like we've had. Like I said earlier, we're very blessed to be brought up in an environment at CCNFC or Kolkata or in India, in the environment of unconditional love. Our friends around us, I hold our friendship in very, very high regard because of the fact that, not just the fact that you're trying to learn how to hit a slicer, or not just the fact that you love your tennis and I love my golf, and you give me some great golf tips. But at the same time, I think it's the human value. I think who you are as a human being counts more than who you are as just someone who has a billion trophies in your showcase. I think there is a correlation for sure. And at the same time, I think the human being makes the champion, not the other way around. But for all those aspiring youngsters,
that's something that Jim also said.
Yeah. How are your come on, I'm going to ask you this. How were your sessions in LGE as far as the mental training goes, as far as the diet stuff goes with Jack Russell? How did you feel that enhanced your life or your career?
So, like I said, the first thing I did was get all the negativity out of me, so that was, I think, the biggest lesson I got back from the LG, is to, get the negative people around me out of my system. That helped me excel. I had only people around me who were positive. So that was a huge thing. And the second thing was, in 97, 98, when I came back, I was one of the fittest golfers on the circuit, because the way I trained in 97, 98, no golfer would train. So, I had the physical advantage. I had, I had all the mental toughness drills, the rituals that were taught, the pre-shot routine that we learned, the same thing that you do before serving, the number of times you bounce the ball. So, the number of times you waggle the club. So everything, it kind of changed me as a person. And I so hope that, someday you and me, we could get something like the LG into.
I think yes, sir.
Just lost Indrajit.
Yeah, he's back. Right.
He's back, sir. I'll just unmute him.
There you go. Sorry, buddy, I lost you for a while there. Go for it. Such an interesting conversation, in the fact of how sports science training makes such a difference in your life. And
yeah. So what I was saying, Lee, is that, something like an LG, like a sports science center in India, is something that is extremely needed for us to, produce champions, especially in individual sports. And I'm sure you're one of the best guys to actually start something in India. Do you have plans for that?
I think right now the plan is just to survive and keep pivoting and keep
yeah, of course.
taking care of what we're dealing with right now. This whole COVID-19 lockdown has surprised the hell out of me on how vast it has affected the whole world. And I mean, my mom originally said, it's going to be 1 month, 2 months. My dad was like, no, it's going to take a year. My gosh, I mean, we're sitting now in mid-July, end July, and haven't been in a job for about 5-6 months. So I feel like some of us are blessed to be able to have the skills and the talent to actually pivot. And I think that's the real lesson out there, is that sometimes life puts you into positions that you can't control why you're there. But what you can do is how you can control how you react to that. So for me, using these web chats and webinars to still spread the word of excellence, still spread the word of achievement and how to build champions is I've had to pivot. I've had to really work hard with my team to set up all of this tech and to set up the knowledge. And as much as I was concerned that before the lockdown, I would go to corporate offices, or I would go to ballrooms or to venues and interact with people in person. Whereas now doing it on the camera, I wasn't quite sure how that would work. But I must say, I really enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy making a difference to people's lives and to bring them some happiness. And as much as I've done it for 30 years with tennis, to find new ways to do it is a great challenge, and it's fun.
I think it's made the world a smaller place also. I mean, it's become so much easier to access, people all across the globe, because we were all little, tech challenged. And I think this lockdown has kind of opened up. I have so many students in Bombay, in Mumbai, who now are in touch with me daily because of the online platform. So I think the positive out of this is that it's made the world a smaller place. I'm sure now you can work out with Dave Herman sitting, he's sitting in Orlando. So, which you didn't think we would do maybe 4 months back. But anyway, Lee, thanks so much for coming online. And it's great that, we could chat in public. And I'm sure a lot of people will take out a lot of positives out of this chat. Thanks so much for coming online.
Thanks, IB. Not only you're a fabulous champion, but also I really cherish our friendship. So God bless. And to all of you out there, stay safe, stay at home,
Thank you.
practice social distancing, keep safe, and look after your loved ones and your community. God bless.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.